Boy, am I on a roll tonight. It's Saturday, December 12th, 2020. 2020 vision, folks. It's 4 a.m. on the East Coast, North Metro Atlanta, Georgia. Hope you're doing well and fine on this day of insanity. Check it out. Look out. The ELF and RF targeting. We have built on the facts, not the theories. Check it out.
We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The movement was begun by a scientist who discovered, quite by accident, these signals being sent. We have been lulled into a trance. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered.
They want their weapons.
Look out for Charlie.
I want that son of a bitch dead. I want him dead.
Before I start the core of this video, it's important that I explain to any newcomers or people that stumble on this that RF targeting / electronic harassment is not gang stalking, and gang stalking is not RF targeting, electronic harassment. They are two completely different things. Everybody who has endured or knows about RF targeting has a belief, a theory, some type of school of thought about how it works, what it does, blah, blah, blah. But this has been going on for years and years and years. And I feel as though we've come to a crossroads. If we want to make progress, we need to establish the facts that can be repeated. The evidence can be gathered and repeated and proven, and then build on that. That is the only way we can move forward. And with that said, I'm going to go over all the facts that I've gathered, and we are going to put this out in hopes that we can have a group of people, much like 4chan, attack this and go at it. And we need people that aren't even dealing with it or have never dealt with it to look at the data and try to assist in figuring out exactly how this is happening, because they don't want their kids to go through it. I would want to be involved with something like this if I could. And even if you don't care one way or another, it's a cool puzzle. This audio system rides on noise. I've done hundreds, if not thousands, of experiments that prove that this system rides on noise, whether it's garbage trucks or the noise of your body, your heartbeat, your breathing, your everything, the noises in your home, the refrigerator, etc., etc. It rides on noise. That is proven. It is a fact. It is 100% factual. If you make a sound, if you drag let's say a fork across the table while you are recording, whatever frequencies that fork kicks up, you are going to have a audio voice or another sound along with that almost instantaneously in the same frequency range as the fork makes. And that goes.
Isn't that fascinating? I find that very fascinating. The fork being the fork, right? The fork. Wow, the frequencies, they're riding on the frequencies. So they could attack you through any of the noise and sound around you. Frequencies is everything, like I stated on my other channel, Meta Mystic Skywatcher. Frequencies. They're using frequencies against us, folks. Period.
With anything, there's one fact to deal with. This system uses auto gain so that it's not any louder than the sound you make or the sound around you. With that said, I can take a slider for recording, let's say, and bring it down to 40. All right. And the sound will stay up for just a split second. So there is a delay. And then it will adjust to that. Then if I take that slider and boost it back up to 100 or 93, it will adjust to that noise level in all electronics as well. So what will happen if I take the slider and just move it all around, constantly move it? It can't adjust. And what happens is the sounds that are being shot to it will constantly be trying to adjust themselves. And you can actually get it louder, but it's more garbled this way as well. So auto gain is a fact. It's something that we're dealing with, and it's something that needs to be looked into. And how can this be done? There is a bed of ELF, extremely low frequency, running 24/7, 365, everywhere, everywhere. I've had samples from all over the United States. I've had samples from other countries. People heard it as far back as 1995, and they can hear it by itself. They refer to it as the hum. So what we're dealing with is a two-part beast, if you will. There is a bed of ELF, and then there are higher pulse frequencies interacting with that bed of ELF. But the bed of ELF is always there. I can record 24 hours a day. I could record in a courtroom and boost it up and show a judge without a problem. All the stuff is repeatable. This system is stereo. It actually produces these sounds in stereo. You can have a stereo recorder going and get from the same microphone, you'll get nothing in the left channel, but in the right channel, you'll have a phrase that pops out in almost red lines with nothing in the left channel, or vice versa. It is certainly in stereo. That is provable. I can repeat it. So there's something that we're dealing with. Stereo ELF wave. So it has to be some type of a transmission, right? But that's what we need a think tank for. This bleeds into all electronics. You can find it in stereos, non-wireless, old school things like Sony Handycams or magnetic tape recorders. Whether they're powered up to the grid with a plug or an adapter or running off batteries, they bleed into everything. The raw signal is many, many, many voices. When you slow this down, you can slow the upfront voices down to almost roar, but in the background, even slowed down all the way, you'll hear a voice at the normal speed. And then you'll hear really fast voices up above it. The same thing happens when you pitch it. You can pitch it to the point where it's so high you can't hear what it's saying or what it's doing anymore, but you'll hear a normal voice at a normal pitch behind that. Super high ones when you try to pitch the low back up to normal. So there is always hundreds and thousands of voices crossing over and bleeding into different frequency bands. So let's say that there's two voices between 100 and 230 hertz, and then there's four between 200 and 320 hertz, and then there's more between 350 and 450 hertz, and it just keeps going and going. There are layers after layers after layers after layers. It's not just one voice. The sound isn't just on land. This is provable. Divers have been underwater, and I've studied the audio, and their cameras and their equipment picked it up underwater. These other people did a balloon test with like a smaller weather balloon and put a camera on it, and when it popped and the camera was falling down because of the wind, it started to pick up these signals. So it's way high up and way down below at the same time. Facts. People hear the same sounds or phrases all around the world. I've polled people from Australia, the UK, America, areas that are thousands and thousands of miles apart. In one of the cases that I found, someone in the UK heard the same thing as somebody on the East Coast of America all the time, the same sounds and same phrases. And there's a guy in California who hears the exact sounds and phrases as somebody in Australia. So this appears to be one system, or more systems all running off the same software. This is why we need a think tank. This stuff crosses frequency bands. You can find it in almost anything, on AM radio, on old dial tuner TVs where you can tune it, especially the handheld ones that have like an old dial, like an AM radio. And you can also find them with scanners, just scanning around. I was scanning yesterday and I found them bleeding through excessively between 35 and 36 megahertz. So they cross frequency bands, and that kind of goes with it bleeds into everything. It crosses all kinds of frequency bands and gets into it. And this is something that has to be considered. We need to put our heads together and start checking off the facts and what that can be and what it isn't, what we know it isn't. That can help. All this stuff. I'm going to have to make a part 2 to this because I'm pretty sure that there are probably a dozen definitive facts that I'm forgetting right now. But there's a lot of information, and it needs to be written down on, like, a blackboard or a dry erase board and be looked at. Because when you just got all this information flying around, take something like 9/11, for example. There are so many factors in that debacle that you can't even process it all unless you start to write it down and have it put up in front of you. Then you can process it and start to understand what was really going on that day. It's kind of the same thing. Okay, this is an example of how this rides on noise. This is a video called Crazy Skies by a YouTuber called Jen Louise. It's not really important what's in the video because it's still a good video, but it's not important. Listen to the audio. It's a minute long. I'm just going to play it. And what you're going to hear is what sounds like a bunch of wind entering the microphone of the phone or the camera or whatever she's using. And then we're going to go through it. But I want you to check it out. The original video and audio. Okay, nothing crazy there. Wind in the mic, right? Just recording outside. Well, this is everywhere. It is everywhere. And I'm going to show you this audio in a different light. When you've heard this enough, you can spot it anywhere. I could hear it in that audio. Now, this is the same audio from her video that's just been tweaked so you can hear what is underneath the initial low end of the wind. So I'm just going to play it all the way through the 1 minute clip. Here we go. Now, it doesn't matter for any newcomers whether you're using a wireless, a wired, non-wireless, it doesn't matter. This is riding on the wind. It's riding on the noise being created by the wind in the microphone, and it hops on. It hops onto everything. So this rides on noise 100%. Now I want to play you a recap of an Unsolved Mysteries episode. I'm just going to play you the audio of it. This is allegedly season 7, episode 20, which would have been 1995. The dude in this episode had been hearing this for 5 years. So that means it's right in line with what I've been saying before, that this came on in about 1990. This is when weird shit started to happen. So let's just play it, check it out.
Imagine being plagued by this sound. A loud, annoying hum that grinds away incessantly, day after day, night after night. Incredibly, more than 1,000 people throughout the world are reporting just such a phenomenon, and it's driving them to distraction.
The thing I noticed about it was it didn't change. The sound didn't change, like it was getting closer or further away or slowing down or speeding up. It was just a steady droning sound.
There is a little bit of a whine somewhere in the background here. And it's kind of like the air is sizzling.
I've been hearing the hum for about 5 years. It sounds like a diesel engine running parked away, but yet it has a physical effect. It seems to make a sound resonance in our sternum and our thorax area. It causes a vibration in the temporal lobe and actually causes ear pain at times and pain on the earlobes.
Hal Roonianen moved from Detroit to Michigan's northern peninsula, hoping to escape the hustle and bustle of suburban living. But instead of peace and tranquility, Hal soon found himself tormented by the hum. It began as a minor annoyance while Hal was studying for a trade school entrance exam.
I noticed it a few times before I was studying, but thinking that it was a motor, it wouldn't bother me that much. But then I noticed it affecting how I could focus and how I could concentrate. That's when it really started agitating me. So I was able to ignore it maybe for the first month or two. But after a while, when I got closer to the deadline of this entrance exam, I started noticing this thing is really affecting how I'm studying. It's really affecting my thought process and how I'm taking in information. And it got to where I couldn't tolerate it anymore, and I had to know what it was. The first few nights I went out looking for it, I went to the natural places that you would think a hum was coming from. I checked out the sewage pumping stations, the airport, the ventilation systems on top of Michigan Tech University, any place that would generate a sound. Finally, I was driving like 100 miles a night in one direction looking for it. No matter where I went, the intensity was always the same.
We brought Hal to Los Angeles to visit Dr. Eugene Flom, one of the nation's leading ear, nose, and throat specialists. Hal was found to be suffering some hearing loss, but there was nothing specific that might explain the bizarre hum.
From what we learn today, we can't prove one way or the other whether there are extraneous sounds in the environment or within him. Those sounds in the environment might be perceived by him differently than they really are because of things going on in his system.
I'm certain that I'm feeling something from an outside source. I'm a yoga teacher, massage therapist, a rolfer. I've studied acupuncture. I'm very aware of the sounds that my body makes, and I know this isn't my body producing this. Many people have suggested that I might be picking up the electrical fields from the local power grid. So what I'd like to do is go down into the caves and get completely underneath it and see if I can get away from the electrical fields.
And that's exactly what he does. He goes underground.
Hal has tried just about everything to escape the auditory onslaught, even braving the deep tunnels of an old abandoned copper mine near his home.
Bed of ELF. Fact.
Would Hal finally be at peace? We soon had our answer.
Yeah, I hear it.
What do you got?
I hear it louder. It's more penetrating.
Louder underground. ELF. It's the only thing that can do that. ELF.
It's actually conducting through my bones more forcefully than it does on the surface.
And this sound, real quick, that sound, the motor sound, the diesel engine sound, that is what people hear now. And then it turns into other sounds later. It can start out at what sounds like tinnitus, can start out at what sounds like a diesel engine or a hum, and then it turns into other sounds later. So this was the very beginning of this.
It's actually conducting through my bones more forcefully than it does on the surface. Disappointing? Very disappointing.
So yeah, the dude was bummed out because he went underground thinking it would go away and it didn't go away. But that's the only thing that can travel through earth and rock, and everything else is ELF. ELF. And this is the exact sounds that people hear now that turn into other sounds as it progresses. Back then, these people were just plagued with the hum. I'm actually talking to somebody who was hit with this stuff much, much earlier, but I need to get more details on that and audio samples. But it's one of the earliest cases that I've personally heard from the person. I've heard tales, but this is one of the earliest cases that I know of. My whole point to all of this is that in order for us to make progress, we have to take these facts and build on them. We can't keep whipping up new theories. We have to knock these things out one at a time. And these are the facts dealing with this. Everything that I listed, these are all the facts, and this is what we need to start with and build on. Look out for Charlie.